What's good guys, here is a little disclaimer on why I even compare the smartphone and a camera setup for $5,000. So guys, I hope you did enjoy the views of St. Petersburg and my color grade of this video. And now let's have a closer look at Freewell Cinemorphic, or let me say Anamorphic lens. So in the kit you'll find this very nice case, also the lens itself, it can have a blue streak or a gold streak, and also 4 different ND filters. I accidentally broke one of the filters, so be careful guys, and we have a 1.55x squeeze ratio. Here is the lens mount mechanism, and to mount it properly you'll need a Freewell smartphone case. The Sirui Saturn 35mm t2.9 lens is a pretty new lens and it's made out of carbon fiber, partially. And I like how lightweight and compact this is because the previous 35mm full-frame Sirui lens was over 1 kilogram in weight, but this one is super nice. And I think you did enjoy the footage with it as well. So here's a little backstage how I did all the shots. It was tripod only the static shots, and both cameras were placed kind of on the same spot. And I really enjoyed shooting with the tripod and only the static shots, and I do recommend you guys try it out because it truly unleashes your creativity and you can see the composition much better. By the way guys, if you want to have a look at the whole kit of Freewell Sherpa, I have a review of it, I'll leave a link down below. So here is how the image looks without a de-squeeze in regular standard camera app. And here is what you got when you de-squeeze the image by 1.55 in post. But as you know guys, the iPhone 14 Pro Max has the ability to use a 2x camera, which is a crop from the main sensor, and here is what happens when we use it. So basically it should work, but it doesn't really work. It's looking like the image is getting much softer and the focus is not on the proper position. And I could not get truly sharp and cinematic results with the 2x camera of the iPhone 14 Pro Max, and I suggest using the Filmic Pro app or some other app to de-squeeze the image because it's very hard to compose your shots in the regular app without the de-squeeze. Also guys, you might have noticed that the field of view of those two lenses is pretty different. So the Sirui lens has 21.8mm horizontal field of view in full frame equivalent, and the Freewell Anamorphic lens has 15.5mm of full frame equivalent field of view. So we have a 24mm lens on the iPhone, and we divide it by 1.55 squeeze factor, and we get 15.5mm in full frame equivalent, which is very wide. That is why you see a lot of this curves and distortion with this lens. And of course guys, I've used the Filmic Pro app to set white balance and shutter speed manually, and also to see the de-squeezed image. And also if you want to introduce some motion with the anamorphic lens, I highly recommend you use a gimbal, a proper gimbal, a good one. Or you can use a tripod like I showed you here, because it's really hard to stabilize the anamorphic footage. Now let's move on. You would also ask me, but we have an ability to put the cinemorphic lens onto a 3x camera lens of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Of course we can, and I've tried it out as well. So here we have the 1x lens, and from the same spot, here it is with 3x lens. So we've moved the lens, and as you can see guys, it's pretty soft and not really cool looking, but still it does work. For certain situations it might be appropriate. So for instance, here we have some candles shot on 1x lens, and they are pretty far away and I couldn't focus really a bit closer. But here we have it on 3x lens, and as you can see guys, we have some compression. I don't really like the double shadowing of the fire, but still there are some use cases for the 3x lens. So one of the most important characteristics of an anamorphic lens is the lens flare. So here we have a pretty strong blue or cyan lens flares, and as you can see guys, when we compare it to Sirui Anamorphic lens, in this case, in this scenario, we don't even see a flare because it's pretty hard to make Sirui Saturn lens to flare, and I like it because I hate when we have a ton of kind of lens flare pollution in the shot. Like in this case, you see a lot of blue streaks from the window, and it's a pain of all the compact mobile cinemorphic anamorphic lenses. I've tested a ton of those, and they all have very saturated and very pronounced flares, a bit over the top. As you can see right here, the Sirui lens doesn't have it at all, but we do have a very nice and soft fall off. Here's one more example. As you can see, the sun is hitting the lens straight away, and as you can see guys, it's just ruining the flag on the left part of the image, whereas on the Sirui lens we have a very gentle, very smooth flare, which is not that saturated, it's not that pronounced, but it is giving you the feeling of the cinematicness, if I can say so. When the sun is hitting the Freewell Cinemorphic lens, you can see that it's just over the top. With the Sirui lens, it's more subtle and less pronounced, which I like. And also guys, when you walk for instance, you can see that the distortion of this lens is making the flare bend as well. And speaking of the distortion, since the Freewell Cinemorphic lens is about 15mm in full frame equivalent, horizontally we have a ton of distortion, as you can see right here. Kinda the ground is bending, and here it is on Sirui Saturn anamorphic lens. It does have a pretty strong pincushion distortion, but compared to Freewell's distortion, it's like night and day. For some people, this kind of fisheye effect might be the effect that you're looking for, but in my opinion, the 1X lens, which is a 24mm full frame equivalent on the iPhone, is a bit too wide for 1.55x squeeze ratio, and this is why we're getting this distorted image. Just look at this Sirui Saturn lens, it's looking like a geometrically correct lens compared to Freewell Cinemorphic. And when we add some motion, you can see that the horizon is bending, so you gotta be careful and watch out for this. And one more detail guys, you see this huge vignette at the left corner of the image, and that is why I had to crop the image a little bit to 108% scale in post and add a letterbox on top to get rid of this vignette. Now let's have a look at the minimum focus and distance. A lot of anamorphic lenses are struggling with a good minimum focus and distance, and the Freewell Cinemorphic, thanks to iPhone 14 Pro Max's capabilities to focus a bit closer than usually, you can get this kind of shot. We even have some bokeh on the background, as you can see, and that's the closest point that I was able to focus on. The Sirui lens is not the best in terms of minimum focus and distance. It's 90 centimeters when you're not using any diopters, but when you do screw on a special diopter, kind of like a magnifying glass for your lens, you can get this close. On this shot we're using a diopter at +4 strength, and we do get a ton more bokeh and even some oval bokeh shapes on the background. So I do recommend you buy a set of diopters. They are not that expensive, like 10 or 12 bucks for a set of 4 diopters, and you'll be more than happy. So what about the image quality? I do think that still iPhone is producing an over-sharpened and over-saturated image. That is why I've been using the Dehancer Pro film emulation plugin to soften the image, to add a little bit of bloom effects, and to reduce this over-sharpened look and over-saturated, over-contrasted look. The Sirui lens is giving me a better result in my opinion straight out of the box, but still I would use Dehancer to kind of emulate film in this shot because I do love how it looks. Without any post-processing, we can see a pretty big vignette as well as very soft corners, but it's not that bad guys, because a lot of cinematic movies like the recent Batman by Matt Reeves, they do have soft corners, and that is why I think it's not a disadvantage, it's just a characteristic of this lens. And all in all, the image is getting a bit softer, which I like, because the iPhone's footage is usually too sharp. I would say over-sharpened. But still guys, if you do not apply any post-processing and softening the image, it's looking a bit too harsh. I would use a mist filter or a bloom effect to reduce this over-sharpening and to reduce the contrast a little bit, but all in all, the image quality of the Freewell Cinemorphic lens is good. To conclude guys, can you make something cinematic with your iPhone? I mean, using an anamorphic lens? I think you can, and as you saw, some of the shots look really good in my opinion. I hope so. Share your thoughts in the comment section below if you also do think so, or if your opinion is different. But all in all, I am more than satisfied with the results, and I do think that it's worth trying yourself. And once again guys, I'm not saying that the iPhone and the Cinemorphic lens are true competitors to the Sony a7S III and Sirui Anamorphic lenses. But it was fun to compare those and to see the differences. If you did enjoy this video, please smash the like and subscribe buttons as I say in my videos and hit the notifications bell. And I'ma see you guys in the next video. Take care, bye.